Hi, everybody. Today we're going to discuss Chapter 8 of our textbook, Airwords Writing Broadcast News in the Internet Age. We give tribute to the Internet age by mentioning the Internet as a place where video and audio can be posted and shared, as well as different social media platforms that can be accessed through applications on your phone, your computer, your tablet, or any similar device. So when we talk about building a package, building a news report, we usually mean the simplest form in audio. That would be the first thing to talk about. And then over time, you can expand it into the video industry, but this is laying the foundations of writing. So don't take the parts about audio or video production too close to your attention right now, but think about dealing with that next time when you're in advanced courses such as video production, audio production, introductory, and more upper division. So chapter 8 talks about building packages with bytes and tracks. And skipping ahead, looking ahead, chapter 9 is already going into the video industry. And so we will probably wrap up the audio part with this, and especially audio news with this chapter, and deal with the rest of the book as necessary. So how do we build a package with bytes and tracks? By bytes and tracks, we mean sound bytes, and by tracks, we mean the tracks of our speech, our narrative. Sometimes I like to nickname my narrative paragraphs as NARR, NAR. That would be my label for the narrative file. And usually, when we're dealing with audio or video in production, we keep those files in appropriate formats. But right now in this class, for this book, for this chapter, our format is writing. We only use language, we only use words, sentences to build a story, to write a report. And then as we move forward to other classes, we will learn how to do it in other media. So, composing packages. The textbook is talking about packages as being standalone stories that reporters file from the field. By standalone, we mean that you don't need a host, you don't need another person in the newsroom to actually deliver your story, but your story is already delivered and recorded in some medium, and then it is given to the station, it's given to your platform to distribute. So in the good old times or the bad old times, it would be tape. A bit further on with technology, it became files. And now we can talk about audio or video files that contain your voice and actualities. So a package is a combination of all forms. It is your speech as journalists, and then actualities, pieces of interviews that you insert, like incrustations into your story. And for that, I like to make a parallel with a nice ring, with jewelry. If you have a ring with a big stone, that's probably similar to a news item, a news cut, where you have the gold band as your story, as your narrative. That's what holds it all together. But the stone in the middle, the center, is an actuality that came from elsewhere, and it's carefully incorporated into your product so that it shines together, but you know that you are the band that holds it together. The stone is your actuality. So if we're talking about jewelry, the jewelry analogy, a package would be a bigger item, a bigger brooch or a bigger necklace that has many gems encrusted, many gems incorporated to shine, and they may have different colors, different shades, but again, what holds it all together, the whole structure that holds it together, is your story, your narrative. So packages, we said, are standalone stories, standalone reports filed from the field. They do have other things, not just narrative tracks and sound bites, but also ambience. And in some cases, those could be elements of music as necessary or as appropriate, depending on the nature of your platform, your station, your distributor. To make a package, the reporter selects the sound bites and then checkboards them with segments of recorded narrative called tracks, pacing these carefully until the story is told within the time allotted. So here the secret is to pull the best tracks, to pull the best actualities from your interviews. And although we talked about actualities in our last conversations, we never listed the criteria for choosing the best ones. And here I want to mention a few things that might come handy in the future when you're doing production. Brevity, good quality, good audio and video quality, good content, presenting emotion, expressing humor, saying something unique that the reporter cannot say in such a unique form. Those call for an actuality, and if you have a brief enough segment, a brief enough passage of your medium, your audio or video from an interview that you can separate, you can cut. That's why it's called a cut. And insert in your story, played with your story. It means that the speaker, the source, is expressing something in a way that is more authentic when it's said in their own voice, with their own appearance in video, rather than you retelling it, because that is kind of a broken telephone method when you tell. But there is strength to you retelling as well, because that way you can condense the meaning, you can skip over the details, you can summarize, you can crystallize, you can make it more compact, and you can make it more effective. You can put the emphasis on the parts that you want to emphasize. You can highlight the parts that will be your focus in that one particular take of the story. And then next time you can focus on something else, and so on and so forth. So you will be covering the same story from different angles, paying attention, noticing different elements of it for each portion of your audience or each newscast. But this is for the traditional news industry. For the non-traditional news industry, of course, the structure of delivery, the structure of distribution is different, and sometimes it's completely voluntary and time delayed. So let's go back to elements that exist in a story. We said that the most authentic parts that we take from the interview, the most telling, compact, audible and visible parts that we take that we love, we incorporate those in our story. But also we have ambient sound. Ambient sound is the surrounding sound, B-roll in video, and sometimes music would be appropriate depending on the nature of your organization, your platform, your station. Okay, so except for internet presentation, these stories are introduced in a newscast with a lead-in. So I wanted to talk about lead-ins because sometimes my students have trouble understanding how it's different from the lead of a story. So a story lead is the first paragraph that contains the who, what, when, where, why, and how information for each story. It's the condensed version, the embryonic version of your story, expressed very precisely and compactly, and also in a way that attracts your audience, keeps them interested, while revealing a lot about the story, but keeping them wanting more, keeping them interested in more detail and more nuance. So you intrigue them by telling them what happened and make them wonder how and why in more detail. But in the lead part of your story, you really need to capture the essence. You're not burying the lead, you're not keeping them waiting, you're not creating cliffhangers, you're just creating a summary that is attractive enough to keep people with you. But before you start your story, before it's played, on your platform, your station. If there is a host to run the whole show, the whole newscast, the host will probably need to introduce your story. And sometimes if the host is playing 5 or 6 stories in a row, it means there need to be bridges and connections so that the newscast flows like one program, like a show. And therefore, you provide the host with a little introduction in which you mention your own name for the host to read and introduce your story. And that is easier seen on a concrete example. So I would invite you to listen to the newscasts that I shared from National Public Radio, and I will be sharing a little more for you to listen and capture, and also maybe visually on CNN, on other programs, the newscast, when it's a newscast, top of the hour news, the host goes from story to story, creating transitions and connecting them logically. Usually the newscast goes from the most urgent headline news, the breaking news, well, with the exception of CNN, where everything is breaking news, right? Someone took a breath, that's breaking news. Someone moved their things from one house to another, it's breaking news. But in all seriousness, there would be breaking news, there would be serious news, politics, the economy, depending on the seriousness and the newsworthiness, the impact of that story. And then we go to health. Nowadays, health has skipped to the top. Health has become more prevalent. Then education, and then culture, and then entertainment, or maybe leisure or fluff. So the lead-in is something like tonight in Houston, Kronos Quartet will premiere its new work from WSUI Guyana to Ocean Reports. So this sentence is read by the host, Bob Edwards, many years ago when I did a story for National Public Radio. It captures what happened tonight in Houston. Kronos Quartet is premiering a new work, and Guyana Tourism reports from Iowa City. And then once they hear my name, comes in my voice, and I tell the story in my voice. When a bolt of lightning hits the earth, it creates a something, such and such scientist gathers these sounds and collects them as tapes, and then he gives the sounds to a musician to write a composition. So I'm telling the story in my own voice, incorporating other people's voices into it for credibility, for emotion, for richness of the experience. Your audience is hearing all of that, or if it's done in video, they're seeing it and feeling as if they're present. So it becomes a very immediate experience when the host is telling the story, bringing in other voices. And the ambient sound, of course, there would be the sounds from outer space, from the music that's written. The bolt of lightning creates an aurora borealis. All those things sound in a specific way, and hearing that brings the audience member into the place, into the time and place. So the lead-in, a good lead-in, allows to introduce the story and the reporter, if the reporter is going to be present and telling the story on their own. I know this might sound a little confusing to all of you. Just 2 more things. There are 2 classic models to build your package, your news package. The altered chronology model, and there is another one particular to general model. I don't want to go deeply into that. Altered chronology explains itself. You bring the most important parts forward, and then you go into more detail. Particular to general, you start from an example and you expand it to talk about a trend. So I invite you to read chapter 8 of your textbook, and that would conclude our audio part, because the next chapters are talking about video. Feel free to read them on your own, study on your own, and conduct all the exercises with the pencil. And thank you for joining me today. We'll talk to you soon.